Every day, while the internet gets bigger by trillions of pieces of information, be it photos, videos, websites, there are millions of pieces deleted too. Maybe it's a post with an embarrassing typo that you wanted to fix, or a meme of your boss you had second thoughts about sending. Sometimes it's an entire online business that's gone bust. Or remember the social media sites of old, like MySpace or Friendster? How many of us managed to save our data from these before our profiles vanished into the ether? Sometimes these pages or posts will be saved. Google's cache function manages to capture some. The site formerly known as Twitter also has its own archive, but many of them will end up permanently deleted, wiped off the face of the World Wide Web. Of course, this is easy for certain people to take advantage of if they want to distort events. This is a problem. Say you're a journalist trying to do deep research for an investigative story, or a lawyer or a judge looking for a URL as evidence. Or how about an academic researcher trying to catalog something? A 2013 survey of law and policy-related publications found that after 6 years, nearly 50% of the URLs cited in those publications no longer work. The process of preserving the internet raises some tricky questions. Today, we're exploring the impermanence of the internet and who gets to decide what's deleted and what stays, and what that means for the rest of us. Every time you send a text message, you're sending a piece of data from your device to another. The same concept applies to what's published on the internet. When social media content is uploaded or a page of website is edited, it's essentially a piece of data going from one server to another. Data can technically be stored indefinitely. However, as anyone who's ever gotten an alert that their iCloud storage is almost full, it does take up space and it can be expensive to store. That's one reason why internet companies are regularly deleting old website pages or inactive social media profiles. Sometimes companies go bust and all your data disappears with them. Occasionally, data gets deleted by accident, like the time MySpace accidentally erased 12 years worth of music during a server disaster. Whoops. Now, most things that human beings publish, such as books, magazines, and historical records, are stored in archives. This means that important cultural relics are preserved, and future generations can get an accurate understanding of history. Academic studies show us that the information presented in archives has a direct impact on how we perceive history. However, when the internet was invented, no one predicted that it would become such a huge reflection of our culture. And so nothing was built in to preserve these online resources for their historical value. That's why, since 1996, a community of so-called digital archivists all over the world have been attempting to store copies of everything that's been published online with a mission of universal access to all human knowledge. The project is called the Internet Archive. It's a nonprofit whose servers are housed in an old church in San Francisco. Its library is the largest web archive in the world, containing 735 billion web pages and close to 70 million books, videos, audio recordings, images, and programs. This particular program and the successes it has experienced, as well as the pitfalls, give us good insight into how internet preservation efforts may transpire on a global scale. To understand how the Internet Archive works, let's talk a bit about how both search engines and traditional libraries work. Search engines such as Google use something called web crawlers, which are kind of like small robots. They travel around the web and take snapshots of everything that's published. In a physical library or archive, employees curate collections of books, movies, and other documents, sometimes making decisions on what's important to include and what is not. The Internet Archive also uses web crawlers to save snapshots of pages. However, while Google uses standardized crawls that trawl the entire web, The Internet Archive has collections of different crawls and datasets, many of them contributed by different organizations and individuals, such as libraries, universities, and governments. The project's founder, Brewster Kahle, likes to compare his project to the Library of Alexandria in ancient Egypt, which attempted to house all of human knowledge at the time. The Internet Archive has already proved itself multiple times as an important tool in the fight against mis- and disinformation. It's been used in legal proceedings and to collect evidence of climate change, and it's become an important resource for storing documentation of Russian war crimes in Ukraine, which certain people would rather see deleted. This makes the Internet Archive a great example of why internet preservation is important, but it does have its limitations and controversies, which point to problems that are important to address when talking about internet archiving efforts in general. At the start of the pandemic, 4 of the world's biggest book publishers sued the archive for copyright infringement over its digital book collection. In March of 2023, a judge sided with the publishers. Another of the archive's major shortcomings is a big pro-America and Western bias in the sites that it has saved. A 2004 study found that the archive has saved 92% of US sites, compared to only 58% of Chinese sites. It also found that US sites had been archived earlier than sites from other countries. The study notes that the bias is not intentional. A web page's likelihood of being archived is based on how often it's linked to by other sites, making pages from smaller internet ecosystems less discoverable by the web crawlers. But the resulting bias is problematic nonetheless. Also, much of the physical infrastructure that supports archiving efforts, as well as the infrastructure that supports the web at large, is based in the US. Similar archiving efforts like the International Internet Preservation Consortium and the Canadian organization WebSite are overwhelmingly made up of institutions from Europe and North America. Other non-Western countries are also running their own crawlers to capture data, including Israel, Japan, and South Korea. Without one universal standardized way to capture the entirety of the web, it may be hard for us to overcome this. For one, many countries don't trust Silicon Valley companies enough to hand this task over to them. Add oppressive internet restrictions by some of the world's largest governments to the mix, and the problem becomes even more complicated. China's Great Firewall and Russia's Single Register, each nation's sophisticated system of internet censorship and surveillance, block countless foreign and domestic websites from public view. Some sites find their way through the filters but don't last long enough before being ID'd and blocked, making them virtually invisible to archiving efforts. And even in nations that do have freer internet access, archiving efforts still remain largely isolated, and with limited international coordination, a lot of information slips through the cracks and is lost forever. In the future, this means different groups of people may end up seeing alternative versions of our shared digital history. It's hard to say exactly where this may lead us, but it fits with what many experts believe will be an eventual bifurcation of the internet. That is, the splitting of the internet into 2 or more parts as different countries pursue their own separate digital policies. Until next time, I'm Hari Srinivasan, and this is Take on Faith. Thanks for watching.